He didn't notice it slipping away. Not at first. Not during the late-night arguments or the quiet mornings where no one spoke. Not when they started sleeping in separate rooms. Not even when the divorce papers arrived. He thought he was still holding on to something, dignity, stability, maybe even a little control. But what he didn't realize was that some things were already gone. Respect, time, identity. Things he thought would survive the divorce didn't. And by the time he figured that out, it wasn't just too late to get them back. It was too late to even explain what he lost. Most men think divorce is about money, lawyers, and custody battles. But the truth is, it's what happens after the papers are signed that really leaves the mark. It's the things you never thought you'd miss. The things no one warned you to protect, that slowly disappear without a sound. And when it finally hits you, you're left wondering how you let it all slip through your fingers. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about seeing clearly what so many men only recognize when it's too late to change. In this video, we're going to break down 7 things divorced men almost always miss. The ones that don't come back, no matter how much you wish they would. Let's get into it. He thought the respect would stay. They weren't enemies. The split wasn't hostile. He kept things civil, didn't drag her through court, didn't badmouth her to the kids. He figured that counted for something, that she'd still see him as the man who provided, protected, showed up, even if the marriage didn't last. But something changed. Not all at once, but slowly. The tone in her voice, the way she spoke to him in front of others, the way the kids started picking up on it. Not outright disrespect, but a shift, a coldness, a quiet message. You don't matter the way you used to. And when it hit him, it hit hard. Because he hadn't fought for his reputation during the divorce. He'd assumed it would stay intact. He thought mutual history guaranteed mutual respect. But once the legal process starts dividing lives, titles change. And in the eyes of others, even people who used to be close, he wasn't dad, or provider, or husband. He was the ex. And that title comes with silence, suspicion, and in some cases, outright dismissal. He never expected to have to earn back the respect he thought he'd already proven. But that's what divorce does. It doesn't just split people. It reshapes how the world sees you. And if you don't defend your identity early on, you may wake up one day realizing it was taken from you, piece by piece, word by word, until all you hear in your own name is what used to be. He thought he'd still have time. Not as much, maybe. Not every day, but enough to stay close. Enough to keep showing up. He told himself the court would be fair, that they'd recognize how involved he'd been. He believed joint custody would feel like joint parenting, but it didn't. What he got were scheduled weekends, court-approved holidays, and the slow, suffocating feeling that he'd become a guest in his own kids' lives. He didn't see the shift at first, but it showed up in small ways. Missed school plays, birthday parties he had to hear about secondhand, the casual way his kids started saying mom's house and dad's house like they lived in 2 separate universes. And he realized what he lost wasn't just time. It was presence. The random conversations. The quiet car rides. The ability to notice when something was wrong without having to ask. Those things can't be scheduled. They happen in between, in the margins. And once you're limited to every other weekend, those margins disappear. He thought he'd always be their anchor. But divorce turned him into an option. And the hardest part? No one warned him that showing up 50% of the time can still feel like missing half their lives. He didn't know who he was without the role. For years, he woke up with purpose, paid the bills, fixed what broke, showed up when it mattered. He was the provider, the protector, the guy who handled it, even when no one noticed, even when it wore him down. It wasn't glamorous, but it was solid. It gave him identity. And then, suddenly, it was gone. Divorce didn't just take the title of husband. It stripped away the quiet sense of purpose that came with it. No more dinners to come home to. No more routine to anchor the day. No one to check in with. No house to maintain for someone else. At first, it felt like freedom. But freedom, without direction, quickly turns into drift. And that's exactly what happened. He started waking up without reason. The silence that once felt peaceful became uncomfortable. The calendar felt empty. The strength he once took pride in began to feel unnecessary. No one was depending on him anymore. at least not in the way he'd built his identity around. He thought divorce would end a relationship. What he didn't realize was that it would unravel who he thought he was. Because when your worth has been tied to what you provide, and that role disappears, what's left behind can feel like a stranger you barely recognize. He thought he'd be fine financially. Sure, there'd be some losses. A split in assets, maybe a few tough months adjusting. But he had a job, a plan, and a mindset built on resilience. He figured once the dust settled, things would balance out. They didn't. What he didn't expect was how deep the drain would go. Alimony, child support, legal fees, the cost of maintaining two separate households. It didn't just hit him once. It kept coming month after month, like a slow leak he couldn't patch. And it wasn't just the money going out. It was what he couldn't build because of it. The savings he stopped growing. The retirement he had to delay. The opportunities he passed on because his financial margin had vanished. He couldn't move, couldn't invest, couldn't even breathe without calculating what he owed. He used to feel in control. Now, every dollar was a reminder of what he used to have. And the hardest part? No one warned him how permanent the financial aftermath could feel. It wasn't about bouncing back. It was about learning to live smaller, long after the courtroom closed. He didn't just lose money in the divorce. He lost the version of his future he thought he could afford. He thought his friends would stick around. They'd been through everything. Birthdays, barbecues, late-night calls, all the usual chapters of shared life. Some are mutual friends. Others were people he'd known long before the marriage even started. He figured the relationships were strong enough to survive the divorce. But one by one, they vanished. Some stopped calling. Others said they didn't want to get involved. A few stayed in touch, but it was never the same. Conversations felt awkward. Invitations stopped coming. Even people who once leaned on him now kept their distance, like his divorce made him contagious. And the silence stung more than he expected, because no one prepares you for the loneliness that comes after. The kind that doesn't announce itself, it just grows slowly. You start realizing the people you thought would show up didn't. That your social world wasn't as solid as you believed. He thought he was losing a marriage. He didn't realize he was also losing his community. And the worst part? It wasn't personal. It was just uncomfortable. People didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. He used to be surrounded by familiar voices. Now he sat in rooms that felt too quiet. That's when it hit him. Divorce doesn't just take your partner. It exposes who was only there when things looked stable. He thought peace would feel better than this. No more arguments. No more walking on eggshells. No more tension in the air every time he came home. He told himself that once the divorce was final, he'd finally breathe. That silence would feel like freedom. But the silence felt different than he expected. The noise was gone, sure, but so was the rhythm. The shared routines. The sound of footsteps in the morning. The smell of dinner cooking. The small, predictable moments that made a house feel like a life. He didn't realize how much those things mattered until they disappeared. And what replaced them wasn't peace. It was emptiness. He'd sit in his living room, TV on, nothing to say to anyone. He'd make dinner for one, clean up in silence, and wonder how the quiet he used to crave started to sound like loneliness. He thought the absence of conflict would bring comfort. But without connection, without the steady hum of shared life, that quiet became a mirror. And what stared back was someone he didn't recognize. Someone drifting, someone alone, someone unsure how to rebuild what used to feel so automatic. He didn't miss the marriage. He missed the emotional shelter it used to provide, even when it was broken. He thought there'd be time to fix it later. Time to have that conversation. Time to show up more. Time to ask better questions, to read the fine print, to push back when something didn't feel right. He assumed he'd get another shot, that if things went too far, he could always pull them back. But that chance never came, because divorce moves fast in some ways and painfully slow in others. And by the time he realized what really mattered, the moments he didn't fight for, the agreements he didn't understand, the words he didn't say, those doors had already closed. Permanently. He replayed things in his mind. The early warnings. The opportunities he ignored because he didn't want to seem difficult. The things he gave up too quickly. The time with his kids he thought would be easier to reclaim. But regret doesn't rewrite court orders. It just keeps you up at night. This is what hit the hardest. Most of what he lost could have been saved. He just didn't see the value of it while he still had the chance. And once it's gone, once the papers are signed, the routines are set, the relationships are changed, all that's left is hindsight. Clear, brutal, unforgiving. He didn't run out of options. He ran out of time to realize they were options at all. He didn't lose it all at once. That's the part people never see. It didn't crash down in a single moment. It slipped away piece by piece. A quiet compromise here, a missed moment there, a conversation avoided, a right not defended. And by the time he realized what was gone, the damage was already done. He thought divorce would be the end of a marriage, but it was more than that. It was the unraveling of his identity, his rhythm, his presence in places he once felt grounded. And what he missed most wasn't just the relationship. It was the roles, the routines, the respect, the sense of being needed. The things that don't show up on court documents, but hit harder than any legal ruling. These aren't just lessons. They're losses, the kind that echo long after the paperwork is filed. But they don't have to be yours. If you're reading this now, hearing this before it's too late, take it seriously. Speak up. Get clear. Protect what matters before the silence creeps in. Because once it does, the things you thought would always be there might vanish. Quietly, legally, and permanently. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. Because the hardest part of divorce isn't what you lose in court. It's what you don't realize you're losing until there's no way to get it back.